we had 3 preceding classes. You don't need to have followed those to be able to understand this class, but I think they are probably even more worthwhile than this class. This is more a fun extra on building titans, not something that I would expect E-University students to start doing tomorrow. So, for instance, my first class, I got many reactions to that one, which was on trading. Very concrete recommendations on how you can start making money tomorrow. But for the fun of it, I thought, let's add a 4th and last class on building titans. And I must confess, it is based on real life experience. However, it is also a extremely bad experience that I had. It did not end well. It did not end extremely bad either, but it did not end well. And so if you also join the occasional failure that I explained to you, then be my guest. But in this class, there are many things that you will recognize. If you have followed the first 3 classes, there will be many things that you will recognize from the way that I run manufacturing businesses, trading businesses, and other things. So, and in that, there are learnings. Now, I assume you all have the document. If more people are joining and if they ask for the document, please post it in the in-game channel so that I can concentrate on giving the class. That is an introduction. I have introduced myself in the past 3 classes. I will do it briefly now. My name is Sinqlaison. I'm running a Titan and supercarrier component and component BPC business for the main alliances. And I'm using part of the earnings to also subsidize E-University a bit. So everybody who came a student in the past or a sophomore more recently got 25 million from me, which at that moment in time in the careers of people is still relevant. Later it's chicken shit. Now, page 1 of my document highlights the who I am, plus also my main failures, including the one in red, and the one in red is the one that we are going to talk about today, building titans. On page 2 of the document, you will find the 4 courses that I gave, and this is the 4th and final one. By the way, if you guys have ideas about other courses that I should give, or then by all means send me an email in game. I'm more than happy to think of other things to share with you guys. I really enjoy. Now, then on page 3. On page 3, as you are now accustomed, when you listen to my my classes, there everything you want to know is on one page. In this case, it's page 3, and which is about building titans. As you can always also recognize, there are a bunch of mistakes in it. For instance, in the first line already, I say a 500 billion investment. When I later did the calculations, it turned out to be 1.4 trillion. But on the messages now. So first is, why would one consider building titans? The first and the main reason to do that is that it's extremely profitable. So my calculations were that if I would do it properly, I would make 1.8 trillion ISK profit per year. Now, that is more than all the largest scams in EVE in the past 8 years combined. And this is honest business and not a scam. The problem with it is also that you need an extreme amount of money to do it. So my calculations were that it cost something like 1.4 trillion to do it proper. You can start smaller, but the way that I wanted to do it, it was 1.4 trillion. I came up with this idea when I was traveling with my son, who is also playing EVE, and we were together in Germany in some Berghütte, thinking what we were going to do the next day, and then we came up with the idea of producing titans. And in the rest of our holiday, we spent, yes, it's family business, Elmond. In the rest of the holiday, when some other family members were not noticing what we were doing, we were building our business plan. and we started prepare. We built an enormous business plan, and we have been preparing for a full year before we could get started. And I will explain you later why I need it, and probably if you want to do it, why you would need a full year to do something like this. And in the preparation, for instance, I had to buy all the assets, I had to train all the characters, I had to find friends that were going to help me, and I had to build an enormous Excel thing in order to run it with as little effort as possible. Now, that's point B. Then point C on the same page 3 is how do you then, after you've done all the preparation work, how do you build those Titans and how do you sell them? Now, that is what I will then talk about. So first step is there, getting all my stuff in place, pushing a few buttons, and then selling the first one. And actually, building Titans, if you have done all the preparation work, is surprisingly easy. Losing them is surprisingly easy as well. That's point D, my failure. I thought that I was extremely smart in preparing for all the risks that I was running in this business. So I spent a lot of time on preparing for all the risks, and there was one risk that I knew that I had, at least in the first 2 months, no defense against. And that was exactly, in the end, what happened and what I will end this presentation with. Now, let's then go into the details. The first one is, why do I believe that it is so profitable? And that's page 4. On page 4 you will see a small table, and sorry for those that don't like Excel. I noticed a few of those in the past 3 courses. It's an Excel table, and it basically explains why I believe it's so profitable. And what you see there is what I aim to do. And what I aimed to do was to produce 8 Titans at any moment in time. 2 avatars, 2 Leviathans, 2 Erebuses, and 2 Ragnaroks. And if you do the math, you will find that you can produce of each of those, if you have 2 BPOs, you can produce 16 per year, so 64 Titans per year. And that, by the way, is also roughly what I sell with my normal business, 64 Titan packs per year. So I know there's a market. I know the sales price, which differs a little bit between 70 and 80 billion, sometimes 85 billion for Erebuses. A friend of mine just sold an Erebus for 85 billion yesterday. And the mineral cost, if you put that besides it, is really low. It's not half, but it's almost half of the sales price. So if you do all the math, you will see that you can make an enormous profit. But that's a gross profit. And what I mean with that is you have to pay some people. First is you have to pay for the space. So you cannot produce those animals in high sec. You need low sec. You need 0.0 space for it. I needed to rent it. At least one of my family members was member of a corp, and they were more than happy to host me there. And I paid them 10 billion per month. Then you need a holder, and I will later explain why and who. It's a very special animal to do all the hard work. 10 billion a month. You need posses, and you need plex. And why you need plex? Because you need extra characters. Characters that if you have produced the Titan, you have to put the Titan. You can't dock a Titan. The Titan will always be in space unless you can. You have a character which flies it and that can check out, and then the Titan is safe. So I needed 8 Titan characters. And that if you compensate for all those costs, the total profit will be 1.8 billion. And that was what got me interested. Now, before I get to the next point, which is how much does it then take in terms of investment, I obviously first have to explain to you guys what it takes to build a Titan. And that's on page 5. And it begins extremely easy. It becomes at Jita. And at Jita, you need to buy minerals. It's on the left-hand side of the page, and we will go to the right. You have to hold those minerals in the end to 0.0. But holding minerals to 0.0 is a complete pain in the ass. And therefore, in order to minimize the pain in the ass, what you need to do is to transform them into something that is much easier to transport. In this case, railguns. Because if you produce railguns with minerals. They become compressed, and I forgot the exact compression ratio, but it's something like 20:1 or 25:1. So instead of having 20 freighters flying to your 0.0 location, which is obviously extremely dangerous, you will have a couple of jump freighters jumping directly from a safe system into 0.0, and you need only a few. So that's why I make this in-between step. I haul them to my high-sec production place. In my high-sec production place, I produce, in a normal station, I produce those 4 to 5 millimeter railguns. And obviously I need characters for that. And a couple of railgun BPOs, but those are cheap. So far, very easy. Then I have to haul those railguns to my outpost. In order to do that, because that's the place where I'm going to produce them. Not in the outpost, but close to the outpost. For that, I need somebody that has a jump freighter, and that takes them to this 0.0 outpost. And I obviously need a corporate office in that outpost for easiness, because I will have 10 or 20 characters flying around, and I don't want to do all kind of contract trades. There's a question in channel, which from Fruit, he says, can't you buy enough railguns in Yita directly? Yes, absolutely. I could buy them in Yita directly, but I want to retain as much of the profit margins as possible. There's the next question, which is from Igaro, who has stepped forward in the presentation. Let me get back to your question, Igaro, in a second. Because what I do when I have those railguns in my outpost, I reprocess them back into minerals. And the question of Igaro is there a mineral loss there? Now, that loss is extremely limited. It's maybe less than 1%. Depends, obviously, on your skills. So you need reprocessing skills, which is in the fifth part of page 5. In the fifth bucket, you will see reprocessing skills. So you need skills with which you can make sure that you lose nothing. Now, so there you're sitting in your outpost, in your corporate office, with lots of minerals. What you do then is you can't produce the thing in your outpost. You have to get them to your POS. Oh, there are a couple of questions in game. A question of Hermes, who says, do you research all the railguns BPO to reduce waste? Absolutely, I do. I normally reduce, for instance, capital components. BPOs are reduced to material efficiency 30 and production efficiency 10. Probably for railguns it's slightly different, but that way you have very limited losses. It's maybe a couple of tenths of percent, but that weighs up easily against all the hassle and the losses of hauling all minerals, tritanium in pyrite, into 0.0 space, which is far too dangerous. Now, so sitting in this outpost with all my minerals, what to do? I am going to produce those titans in POSes. You cannot produce them in an outpost. It's not like normal production that you might be aware of, where you're sitting in your high-sec station with your minerals or your stuff and a couple of BPOs or BPCs, and there are slots, manufacturing slots in that station. You can't do that with a Titan. For a Titan, you need a POS. So in this system where we had the outpost, I had also 8 POSes. And each of those POSes contained a couple of things. They contained a capital ship assembly array, where you produce the Titan. They contain a second capital ship assembly array, where all the components for the next Titan that will be cooked are already assembled, at least stocked. And it contains a capital ship maintenance array, in which you need later, once you have produced the Titan, to fit the Titan, because you want to fit it with certain, for instance, with some cloaking devices and the like. That's easier when you want to sell it later. Now, having said that, so what do you need? I need to haul the minerals to the POS. And I don't want to do it myself. So I need a guy, a friendly guy, that has freighters, and that's part of my corporation, or that becomes part of my corporation, and that takes my minerals and hauls them to my POS. That saves me a lot of time. This guy needs to have access rights to my capital ship assembly array. Otherwise, he cannot get my minerals into my array. And there are some trust issues there, because he could easily walk away with 40 billion of minerals, which is what I don't want. So I give him the access right to get minerals into my array, but I don't give him access right to get them out of my array. But then he doesn't know if he has put my stuff into my array, whether he gets his money back, because we work with collateral. So therefore we split the risk. He has some risk, I have a couple of billion of risk. And very important, on the bottom of that list, whole minerals to 0.0, you will see some peace and quiet in the 0.0 system. Why? Because next thing is I'm going to produce capital components. And that takes 10-15 days to produce a stack of those. So I have to move them into the assembly array. I need BPOs in my outpost. Luckily, I don't have to put my capital component BPOs into my POS. That would be really dangerous. I can keep my capital component BPOs in the outpost. I need capital manufacturing skills, and then I produce the components. Next thing I do is I want to produce titans, and that's why I need to take the components from the assembly arrays and put them into the capital ship assembly array. And there I produce the titans. So I need Titan BPOs, is the first thing I need. You could also work with Titan BPCs, obviously, but I thought it smarter to work with Titan BPOs. I need capital manufacturing skills at level 5, which takes a boatload of time to train. And I need to have some certainty that my alliance will keep sovereignty in this area for 45 days, and that my POS will not be shot. And then finally, if all that is done, my Titan is produced, I need to be able to sell it. And I want to do that in a safe way. So the first thing I need is to have Titan characters that can board the ships and can fly to a 0.4 POS that I erected somewhere else and can go offline there so that the ship is safe. So that's the next thing I need, is a 0.4 POS that is safe, that's mine, and I need a trusted third party, and I will get back to that. And last but not least, I need a buyer, but the good news is there's loads of buyers. Now, sorry for this lengthy explanation, but it's a lengthy process and I don't know how to explain it shorter. But if you want to do all that, what are the costs? What are the initial investments you have to make? Where do I get the 1.3, 1.4 trillion from? Now, that's on page 6. On page 6 you see the same buckets, but now you see all the money that you need to get going. There's minerals you need to buy. There is, the good news, there's a little bit of collateral that you get from your holder for the stuff you give him. There's the railguns that you have in stock, now, etc., etc., etc. And in the end, you need Titan characters, you need a POS, and I estimated I would have average 4 Titans in stock. So 1.4 trillion. Luckily, you don't need them on day 1, but you need a big amount of this on day 1. So say at least 500-600 billion. Probably more. No, probably 1 trillion. Now, what I did then is, you remember my story of my son and I in this German Berghütte, thinking about how are we going to do this. And this was going to be a 1-year effort. So why was it going to be a 1-year effort? That was because we needed to do a lot of stuff. And that's on page 7. It's all the preparation work. And with the green parts, you will see what I had in place already. I did not need to do extra work for that. For instance, go to the one before last bucket called Produce Titans in the POS. I needed 8 Titan BPOs. Good news was I already had those. But on the right of that, there it says trained 8 trained Titan pilots. Now, the bad news was that I had no 8 Titan pilots laying around, nor did I ever plan to have 8 of those, because multi-boxing Titans is probably a little bit ballsy. I needed an 0.4 POS. Below that, it's only a day. I needed to have 1 or 2 characters trained up to Titan production skills number 5. It's a month. I needed to, but important also, the third from the right bucket, called produce Titan components, the last one, build 8 POSes. Now, that's a horror. If you want to build 8 POSes in 0.0, it's pretty easy to get the POS there and some items, but to have a Death Star POS with 2 CSAAs and a capital ship maintenance array that Russia provided the link to in the in-game channel, those are big ones. Those are freighter size items. So I needed to get 24 freighter size items to my production place. Now, that was not easy. We were in constant wars, and the systems that we wanted to go away from at OIMO, there were often enemies. So it was not easy to get them there. But in the end, we succeeded, and we got them there safe. So this was all what I, basically page 7, what I all arranged in this year to get going. But that was not all. The next thing is I needed friends. Because this one was going to be a gigantic effort. And at one moment in time I did the calculations, and I thought it was going to cost me, the holding alone, something like 14 or 16 hours per week. And if there's something that I don't have available, it's 14 to 16 hours per week. But luckily, I had a friend in Eve. And this friend has 14 to 16 hours per week. And he likes holding, and he likes earning a lot of money. And he has boatloads of collateral. And that was all what I needed. And that's on page 8. I needed 2 friends, actually. I needed a guy who wanted to do holding, and I needed a guy that was going to do the trade of the Titan. But let me first concentrate on the holder. This guy was going to be special, because he needed something. He needed freighter pilots in HiSec. He needed freighter pilots in 0.0. He needed freighter pilots, jump freighter pilots. So this was somebody that had at least 8 characters and could fly jump freighters and all the lot. He needed to have 30 billion in collaterals. He needed to be completely discreet, because there was absolutely no way that he should ever tell my enemies, or competitors for that matter, where I was producing. He needed to be super cautious, because he was flying around with 10, 20 billion of my stuff every day, etc., etc., etc. But the good news is he also should like holding, and he should like 120 billion per year. And he liked that. Elmert is remarking in the in-game channel that he wished he had people in real life that would spend that amount of time for him. No, this guy, this holder, likes it. That was the good news. Then I needed a second person, and that person was much easier to find, and that person is called Darkness. I talked about him in my previous class, and that is, Darkness is a trusted third party. Because what's the problem of selling a Titan? The problem of selling a Titan is not like you, as you are buying or selling stuff, which is what you do in a in a station, or even on contracts, which is somebody offers something, you look at it, you think, yeah, that's actually the item that I want to buy. You press buy and you have the item. And it's completely safe on both sides, because you get the item and he gets or she gets the money. With a Titan, that's not the case. A Titan you cannot dock in a station. The only way to hand over a Titan to somebody else is that you meet in space, and that the pilot of the Titan ejects from the Titan, that the pilot of that wants to have the Titan ejects from the ship that he is in, and that he boards the Titan and flies away with it. But then there's immediately a problem, because the problem is, who's going to scam who? For instance, I promised this guy a Titan. He pays me 80 billion and I don't show up. Or even if he shows up, I shoot him. The other way around is that he could then say, yeah, I don't want to run that risk, and therefore I'm not going to pay you in advance. You deliver me the Titan, and then I will pay you. Now, obviously, then the risk is reversed. I give this guy a Titan, he flies away with it, and he will never send me 8 billion. Now, for that reason, guys like Darkness and Kriba came up. Darkness has really, like Kriba, a completely impeccable reputation, great guy, and what he does is the following, and it's explained on page 8 on the right hand side. If you want to buy a Titan from me, it goes like this. We make a deal. You want to buy an Erebus from me, fitted like this, for 85 billion. Good. I mail Darkness, say I've got a buyer, and this buyer is going to send you 85 billion. So you send Darkness 85 billion. You feel maybe a little bit bad about it. So before you do, you check his forum thread, and you see that many people have sent him 85 billion and are still happy. So you sent him 85 billion. He then sends me a mail saying, Sinqlaison, I received 85 billion from XYZ, who wants to buy your Erebus. Excellent. And we make an agreement, the three of us, buyer, Darkness, and me, on a time and a place. And I say, okay, go to the system. I will tell you later where exactly you want to go, but go to this system at 3 o'clock on Sunday. We arrive there, all the three of us, and then I say you, in this system, go to Arihonen, Planet 5, Moon 2. And there is my POS. I don't want you to have that information up front because I don't want to have any funny stuff. And the moment you have arrived, I have just arrived also in my Titan. So I've basically taken my Titan pilot and entered my POS. I give you the POS password. You fly into the POS. I eject from the Titan. You eject from your ship. You get into my Titan and you fly away. After you've flown away and are completely safe, you say to Darkness, Darkness, I'm safe. I'm happy. Give this guy his 85 billion. And that's what Darkness then does. Except for the fact that he also wants from you, the buyer, a fee. And I forgot what it was. I think it's a couple of 100 million for the service. And it's absolutely worth it. So that's the two friends you need, Darkness and a Holer. Now, for those who have seen my class number 3, they also know that I'm always using another friend, which is called Excel. And why do you need Excel? Now, if you want to produce 8 Titans simultaneously, you need to keep track of the minerals that you are using, buying, and where they are already at JITA, in your high-sec system, or in the outpost, or already in the corporate hangar of your POS, and if so, in which POS, and how many of those are then in the component assembly arrays of which POS. So it's complete horror, and that's only the minerals. You have to keep track of the components, because you can start pressing produce Titan till you drop dead, but if you don't have the exact set of components in your capital ship assembly array, it will not work. So there's an enormous amount of things that you need to keep track of. Now, the only way that I know to keep track of that is by Excel, and that's on page 9. And I did not want to just keep track of it. I wanted this thing to tell me what I should do. So I programmed it in such a way that every time I produced every time I sold a ship, I wanted to be reminded by the spreadsheet. How many more components do you need, Sinqlaison? How many more minerals do you need in your opened O outpost? How more mineral railguns do you need in your high-sec production system? And how many more railguns need to be hauled there? And how many more minerals do you need to buy at JITA? Automatically. So that's on page 9. It's what the Japanese would call a Kanban system, a pool system. And it basically, instead of you pushing lots of minerals and components into the system and hoping that they will find some use later, it works the other way around. It basically works back from the customer order and then calculates all those things that you need. If you have a customer order for an Erebus, how many components do you need? In what POS do you need it? How many minerals do you then need in that POS? How many railguns do you then have to have delivered to your outpost? How many railguns do you then have to have produced in HiSec? And how many minerals do you have then to buy in ITA and have to transfer to be hauled to your HiSec production place? So those are all the steps that you have to take, and that's described on page 9. And obviously there are some spreadsheets behind it, but I will not bore you with that one. That said, after you've done all that and produced a ship, which is actually, as I said earlier, extremely easy, because that's just assembling enough components in your capital ship array until the moment that that capital ship array contains, for instance, 105 armor plates, 105 capacitors, 105 clone fed bays, etc., etc. And then what you do in your outpost, like in a normal station, you press on industry, you take you select your BPO, and you produce manufacturing in the right location, which is POS 8, 8.5 or whatever it is, and you produce manufacture, and there off it goes. 45 days later it's ready. What to do then? Now, you have one of your pilots trained, and you deliver the ship. The ship is then in the capital ship assembly array, you dock it, and you fly away with it to your open forepos. And then on page 10 is the photo of the first Nix I sold, because I did not immediately start producing a Titan. I first wanted to do a little bit of testing, whether I really understood it. So I produced first a Nix, and here you see the trusted third party. It was darkness, or at least an alt of darkness, which obviously I would not trust for 1 second. So I first checked with darkness how his alt was called, and he said it's darkness alt, whatever. So fine. He's observing there in my POS. You see that my POS has quite a peculiar setup. It's just a POS with hardeners, so it's almost impossible to quickly destroy. And it only has to survive 1 Titan trade. Obviously I would like it to survive longer, but whatever. By the way, don't bother checking it anymore, it's destroyed. And you see the customer whose name I erased just entered the Nix and he flew away. Now, so that's how it works. That was all about producing Titans. There's a question from Urana, who asks, so do you set up a new POS for every selling event? No, I don't. So I hope my buyers are as discreet as I am. So they will not tell my location to others. But also I'm not going to talk a lot about the date and the time of a next trade. So theoretically, there is a possibility for somebody to trap me in my Titan. So if you would know, for instance, that there is going to be a Titan trade in Aruhonen on 3 o'clock on Sunday, and you would have pilots there with heavy interdictors and people that can scan extremely fast, the moment my Titan character logs in and starts to align to the POS and warp to the POS, at that moment in time he is still vulnerable. So that's an action that I take 1 or 2 hours before I do the trade, and so the likelihood of myself then being trapped is very small. Now, all this being said, there are a couple of risks, and those are the last 2 pages of this presentation. There are a couple of risks in this business, because you are not going to earn 1 point whatever trillion ISK, 1 million ISK, if you are not running a risk. And what I did is I did an analysis of the risk I was going to run with a method that I learned from a guy that I knew that worked in banking. And basically what he explained to me is that how bankers work is they say you have an expected loss, so the money you can expect to lose, and that's equivalent to the chance that you get into trouble, multiplied by how much money is then at stake, multiplied by how many you are going to lose. Elmet is making this remark that this game is making me paranoid, and absolutely you should be paranoid, because I am completely paranoid if I have 1 trillion of investment at stake. And I knew there were 2 risks. The first risk is that my friends would boot me out of their alliance. So why would they? Now, first is they might not really be my friends, or they might not like me showing off conspicuously with all kind of wealth that I earned thanks to them having safe space. So there could be all kind of reasons. And if they would have booted me, then I have no access anymore to the outpost. If I have no access to the outpost, my complete production comes to a standstill. My titans are not accessible. So that would be really horrible. The second problem is my alliance is still my big friend, but my alliance is being booted out of its system, or out of its whole region, obviously. Alliances are typically not booted out of individual systems only. And if that happens, my POSes are destroyed, I don't have access to the outpost anymore, etc., etc. So what I did, again, my son and I, we thought through what can happen. And what are we going to do, so assuming shit happens, what are we going to do to make sure that we then lose nothing? And this page 11 describes all our actions that we took up front. So no conspicuous display of wealth, making sure that the alliance, that we have solid relations there, that we fly on PvP with them, that we help them if needed, make sure that they share in the profit. So all kind of things to make sure that the alliance likes us. And just to be paranoid, assume that we are wrong. Assume that we are wrong and that they don't like us, or that there may be people in the alliance that don't like us. Make sure that we know up front, that we have some warning time. That's the second box on the top row. Gather intel to have pre-warning time. And if that happens, and if we get pre-warning time, you will see 45 days, 10 days, and 1 day is the time that we need to pack up and get out. And if we had this warning time and we would have been in time, our losses would be absolutely low. And probably we would be stuck with a couple of CSAAs and towers in the outpost, because we packed them up and hide them in the outpost, but then we can always sell them from that outpost. That was risk one. We thought it was a pretty low risk. The second risk we thought was an even lower risk. That was that our alliance would be booted out of northern space. Our alliance had this northern space for years. It was thought to be completely safe when I started with the business plan. So, first risk, thought to be low, was that our alliance would be booted out. And obviously, what can I do about it? Now, first I can hire a mercenary. I could have hired Pandemic Legion. They cost 600 billion for 2 months. I could reimburse losses of defenders. And I could also make sure that my POSes are strong, but that is absolutely irrelevant. Once people get your region, then destroying your POS is a piece of cake. So what if I would be wrong, and if they would overrun my region, what would be my losses? Now, again, if I would know up front, second box on the bottom, if I would gather intel on that, so I would make sure that I listen to the alliance chat, that I keep track of the wars, and of the progress of that, I would know up front when things are going wrong. And then the same 45 days, 10 days, and 1 day apply. I would stop production in a measured way, not destroying stuff. I would stop production in a measured way, pack up, and leave. And my losses would be 0. That was what I thought up front. And I made one box, my son and I made red, which was the bottom left box, because we did not have the money at that moment in time to hire Pandemic Legion. And we had maybe 200-300 billion, but we did not have 600 billion. So we thought, in a couple of months' time, we will have the money, but now we don't. So let's just cross our fingers and hope, just like in the last couple of years, that no shit will happen. Now, as you can imagine, probably having already read the next page, page 12, shit did happen. And this is the article from the start of the war of the drone Russian Federation against the Northern Coalition. and we were producing in space of the Northern Coalition, and we were overrun. And this article is about Majesta Empire. Later on, there were all the areas of Rage and Morses Mihi and others. Razor were overrun. So I was producing somewhere in that space. And in the end, we lost. And we lost the opportunity. Now, did we lose the 1 trillion of stuff that we had out there? No, luckily we did not. Because we had thought up front about what to do about it, and we had done the packing up. So we got out all our Titan BPOs, we got out an avatar that we produced, on which we made 40 billion profit, a Nix that we produced, on which we made 5 billion profit. We got out all our expensive minerals, the railguns, the freighters, the jump freighters also. We did not get out the low-end minerals and the big items, the CSAAs and the CSMAs, as you explained, 24 freighter loads, big war going on. Not a smart idea to fly around with 24 freighters. So we kept them there. We sold them later. By now they are all sold. It's now a year later. But we also lost some stuff. For instance, I paid for an expensive expansion of the outpost to allow me to open a corporate office there. I lost that investment. I lost a freighter, very stupid, extremely stupid, to a couple of guys from the orphanage. I just failed to wait for 1 or 2 days, getting a corporation out of an alliance, and we lost the freighter with 10 billion of stuff. I'm still sure that that this is probably one of the orphanage's biggest kills ever. So I gave them that honor. Stupid me. And I lost a lot of sleep. At one moment in time, I was on an airport in Paris, flying back from my real life work to where I live, and my son was in a blockade runner, going with all our Titans to high-sec, and I lost a little bit of sleep and peace and quiet over whether he would manage to go through unscathed. He did in the end. And but I had a couple of regrets. You probably already read my regrets. My biggest regret is obviously that my business was screwed up by the Drone Russian Federation and by Pandemic Legion. The good news is that I later got even with Pandemic Legion by destroying a couple of their POSes in high-sec where they were copying Titan BPOs. That must have cost them probably 50 to 70 billion ISK. The whole Goon Swarm group war decked them as part of that effort, so that was good news. And but anyway, if I would have started a little bit earlier, if the preparation would have taken less time, I would have had much more money, and I would have been able to say to Pandemic Legion, instead of joining the drone Russian forces, we will hire you to attack the drone Russian forces, and I would have still been safe and producing Titans. But anyway, I'm not. I'm back in high-sec, and I hope you, despite this being a complete failure, still enjoyed slightly the experience that I now shared with you. Any questions? Oh, Jeremiah is asking, how many years were you playing Eve before you got to the point of producing Titans? I was playing Eve then I think I played Eve since 2005. It was one of my earlier presentations, so that's now 7 years. I started producing Titans last year, so 6 years ago. So after 6 years of Eve. And also, how many hours do you play Eve per week? I play Eve probably 8 hours per week in total. And part of the reason why I'm employing the Holer friend and working with the with guys like Darkness and others is and my family, which some would call child labor, but is to save time, because I don't have the time it takes to put in all the effort. A question by Miles. Why do you build railguns, transport them and reprocess them instead of just transporting the minerals? Now that is because the railguns have this 20:1 or 25:1, probably somebody can find it, compression ratio. That means that if I produce railguns from the minerals, I have 25 times less stuff in cubic meters to transport to the outpost, meaning that instead of having, for instance, 8 freighter runs, I can go with 1 jump freighter. And the jump freighter can fly immediately from Oimo, where I was going from, to my production location. Somebody is asking how you can do this with 8 hours per week. Now, preparing for a full year is a big part of the answer. Excel is the second part of the answer, etc. Yeah, 21:1 compression ratio. Now that could be true, Fruit. I wouldn't know exactly. I probably had it in my spreadsheet someplace. Anyway, any further questions or suggestions for next courses? Always happy to help. Stentum is asking if I could share my spreadsheet. I'm a little bit sorry about that, Stentum, because my spreadsheet already for this presentation, I completely sanitized it, and it's only the top sheet. So there's many sheets below, completely linked, and all including my character names, location names, and stuff like that. So I would rather not share it. Question from Elmond, do you not lose some minerals from reprocessing railguns? Now, not from the reprocessing, that's not the issue. From the producing railguns, you do lose a little bit of minerals. So you start with 10% waste in producing, but obviously the thing being produced is only maybe 0.2 or 0.3% that you lose. So it's very minimal, almost nothing. Russia wants to have a suggestion on making your first 100 million, 1 billion as a next course. I would go to my course number 1, trading. With trading, I made my first 1 billion. It's extremely easy. Just follow my suggestions in course number 1. It has been recorded, and also the material has been is there. Logren is asking, do you buy minerals or the roid stuff? No, I buy minerals. So maybe that's a little bit lazy, but producing minerals myself is not my piece of cake. I think those were your questions, unless there is a last one. In that case, I would call it quits. Thank you for your attention, for sitting through, at least some of you, through 4 classes. Number 1, which was, I think, super concrete, and this one was completely useless for most. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed. Speak soon. Bye-bye.